The ultimatum, the tension in the boardroom of Cross Technologies, was thick enough to cut with a knife. 200-year-old Damian Cross sat at the head of the polished mahogany table, his jaw clenched as he stared down his parents. Victoria Cross, an elegant woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair pulled back in a perfect bun, sat to his right. Her pearl necklace caught the light from the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked downtown Chicago. Sebastian Cross, a distinguished man with silver hair and cold blue eyes, occupied the chair to Damian's left. "This discussion is over, Damian," Victoria said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had never been denied anything in her life. "The engagement party is scheduled for next month, and the wedding will take place in 6 months. Penelope Hartwell is perfect for you, and perfect for our family's reputation." Damian ran a hand through his dark hair, his green eyes flashing with frustration. "Perfect for the family reputation? About what's perfect for me? I barely know Penelope. We've had maybe 5 conversations in our entire lives." Sebastian leaned forward, his voice low and threatening. "What you want is irrelevant, son. This marriage will secure our partnership with Hartwell Industries. It's worth billions to our company. Your personal feelings are a luxury we cannot afford." "A luxury I cannot afford? You mean?" Damian shot back, standing abruptly. His 6-foot frame towered over the seated figures. "I've built this company into what it is today. It's my innovations, my vision, my sleepless nights. And now you want to trade me like a business asset?" Victoria's expression remained cold. "You built this company with our money, our connections, and our guidance. Everything you have, we gave you. It's time you remembered that and acted accordingly." The words hit Damian like a physical blow. He had always known his parents were controlling, but he had never realized just how little they thought of him as an individual. To them, he was nothing more than an extension of their business empire. "And if I refuse?" Damian asked quietly, already knowing the answer would destroy him. Sebastian stood, straightening his expensive suit. "Then you're no longer our son, and you're no longer the CEO of Cross Technologies. We'll find someone more cooperative to lead the company." The room fell silent, except for the gentle hum of the air conditioning. Damian felt trapped, cornered like an animal with nowhere to run. Everything he had worked for, everything he had built hung in the balance of a decision he never wanted to make. "I need time to think," Damian said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "You have until tomorrow morning," Victoria replied curtly. "The announcement goes out at 10 a.m. sharp." That evening, Damian found himself walking the streets of Chicago, his usually confident stride replaced by aimless wandering. The autumn air was crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and the distant promise of winter. He had shed his expensive suit for jeans and a leather jacket, hoping to blend in with the crowd and clear his head. The city lights blurred together. As he walked, his mind racing with possibilities. He could give in to his parents' demands and marry Penelope, living a life of quiet desperation. He could refuse and lose everything he had worked for. Or he could find a third option, though he couldn't imagine what that might be. His footsteps led him to the arts district, where galleries and coffee shops lined the streets. Even at this late hour, there were people milling about, artists and dreamers pursuing their passions without the weight of family expectations crushing their spirits. Damian envied them their freedom. It was then that he heard the music. The sound of an acoustic guitar drifted through the cool night air, accompanied by a voice so pure and haunting that it stopped Damian in his tracks. He followed the melody until he found its source, a young woman sitting on a blanket near the entrance to Grant Park, her guitar case open in front of her with a few scattered bills and coins. She was beautiful in an unconventional way, with long dark hair that caught the streetlight and warm brown eyes that seemed to hold depths of emotion. Her clothes were simple worn jeans, a faded band t-shirt, and a denim jacket that had seen better days. But when she sang, she transformed into something magical. Damian found himself mesmerized, standing at the edge of the small crowd that had gathered to listen. The woman's voice told stories of heartbreak and hope, of dreams deferred in love, lost. Each note seemed to come from somewhere deep within her soul. When the song ended, the crowd dispersed, dropping money into her guitar case before moving on. Damian remained, studying the young woman as she carefully counted her earnings and packed them away. "That was incredible," he said, stepping closer. She looked up, startled by his presence. Her eyes were wary, but not unfriendly. "Thank you," she said simply, her voice soft and slightly raspy from singing. "I'm Damian," he offered, extending his hand. She hesitated for a moment before shaking it. "Luna Rivera." "Luna," Damian repeated, liking the way her name felt on his tongue. "That was beautiful. Do you perform professionally?" Crossed Luna's face, and she looked away. "Not anymore," she said quietly, beginning to pack up her guitar. The proposal Damian noticed the careful way Luna folded her blanket, the practiced efficiency with which she organized her few possessions. Everything she owned seemed to fit into a worn backpack and guitar case. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. "I mean, do you have somewhere to go tonight?" Luna's spine stiffened, and she turned to face him with a mixture of pride and defensiveness. "I can take care of myself," she said firmly. "I don't need charity." "I wasn't offering charity," Damian said quickly. "I was just concerned." "Getting cold and what? You think because I'm sitting on the street I must be homeless?" Luna's voice had an edge to it now, though Damian could hear the hurt underneath the anger. He held up his hands in surrender. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend you. I just... You seem like someone who's been through a lot." Luna's expression softened slightly. She studied Damian's face, searching for something. "You don't look like you've had many problems in your life," she observed. "Nice clothes, expensive watch, manicured hands. What's a guy like you doing in a place like this?" Damian laughed bitterly, running away from my problems, apparently, though they seemed to have followed me. Something in his tone must have resonated with Luna because she sat back down on her blanket, patting the space beside her. "Want to talk about it? Sometimes it helps to tell a stranger." Damian hesitated for a moment before sitting down beside her. The proximity allowed him to catch the faint scent of her, shampoo's something floral and clean that contradicted his assumptions about her living situation. "My parents want me to marry someone I don't love," he said simply. "Actually, they're demanding it. If I don't go through with it, they'll cut me off from everything, the family, the business, my entire life." Luna was quiet for a long moment, processing his words. "That sounds awful," she said finally. "But at least you have a choice, even if it's a hard one. Some of us don't even get that." "What do you mean?" Damian asked, genuinely curious. Luna pulled her jacket tighter around herself. "Sometimes life makes choices for you. Sometimes you wake up one day and everything you thought you knew about your life is gone. You're left with nothing but the clothes on your back and a guitar that used to belong to your father." There was such pain in her voice that Damian felt his chest tighten in sympathy. "What happened to you, Luna?" She shook her head. "That's a story for another time. Right now, we're talking about your problem. This woman your parents want you to marry, do you know her at all?" "Penelope Hartwell," Damian said with a grimace. "She's beautiful, educated, from a good family. On paper, she's perfect. But there's no spark, no connection. Marrying her would be like signing my own death warrant. So don't do it," Luna said. "Simply, it's not that easy. If I refuse, I lose everything I've worked for. My company, my life's work, it all disappears." Luna turned to face him fully, her brown eyes serious. "Let me ask you something. If you marry this Penelope and keep your company but spend the rest of your life miserable, what good is any of it? What's the point of having everything if you can't be yourself?" Her words hit home harder than Damian expected. Whoa, he had been so focused on what he would lose that he hadn't considered what he would gain by walking away freedom. Authenticity, the chance to find real love. "You're right," he said slowly. "But it doesn't change the fact that I'm trapped. There's no way out that doesn't cost me everything." Luna was quiet for a moment, and Damian could almost see the wheels turning in her head. When she spoke again, her voice was cautious, uncertain. "What if there was another way?" she asked quietly. Damian turned to look at Luna, intrigued by the sudden change in her tone. "What do you mean?" Luna bit her lower lip, clearly wrestling with whether to voice whatever idea had occurred to her. "Well, your parents want you to get married, right? They didn't specify that it had to be to Penelope Hartwell." "Actually, they did," Damian said with a rueful smile. "Very specifically." But what if you were already married? Luna asked her, voice growing stronger as the idea took shape. What if you were already off the market? Damian stared at her, not quite understanding where she was going with this, not following. Luna took a deep breath, and when she spoke again, her words came out in a rush. What if we got married? Not for real, I mean, but legally. A contract marriage. You get out of your arranged marriage, and I get... She paused, her cheeks flushing. I get a chance to get back on my feet. The suggestion hung in the air between them like a challenge. Damian's first instinct was to laugh at the absurdity of it, but as he looked at Luna's serious expression, he realized she wasn't joking. You're suggesting we enter into a fake marriage? He asked slowly. Not fake, Luna corrected. Real, in the legal sense, but temporary. A business arrangement. You help me get stable, and I help you escape your parents' control. After a year or two, we get divorced and go our separate ways. Damian ran a hand through his hair, his mind racing. It was crazy, absolutely insane. He barely knew this woman, and she was suggesting they bind their lives together, even temporarily. But as he thought about it, he realized it might actually work. My parents would be furious, he said, though he was starting to sound less like he was objecting and more like he was thinking out loud. But they couldn't force you to marry Penelope if you were already married, Luna pointed out. And eventually, they'd have to accept it or risk losing you permanently. Why would you want to do this? Damian asked, studying her face. What's in it for you, really? Luna looked away, her jaw tightening. Let's just say I could use a fresh start. To rebuild my life without constantly looking over my shoulder. There was more to her story, Damian realized, but he sensed that pushing for details would only make her shut down. Besides, he wasn't exactly being completely forthright about his own situation. This is insane, he said finally. Completely, Luna agreed. But sometimes insane is exactly what you need. The agreement they sat in silence for several minutes, both lost in their own thoughts. The night air was getting colder, and Damian noticed Luna shivering slightly despite her jacket. If we did this, he said carefully, it would have to be completely professional. A business contract with clear terms and boundaries. Luna nodded. Agreed. No strings attached? No expectations beyond what we agreed to up front? You'd have to move in with me, Damian continued. My parents would be suspicious if we weren't living together, and there would be public appearances, social events, family dinners. I can handle that, Luna said, though Damian caught a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. Can you? He asked gently. Luna, I don't know what your situation is exactly. But my world, it's not easy. There are expectations, protocols, ways of behaving that are completely arbitrary but absolutely essential. The media attention alone could be overwhelming. Luna lifted her chin defiantly. I'm stronger than I look. Something in her tone convinced Damian that she was telling the truth. This young woman had survived whatever had brought her to the streets, and she had done it with her dignity intact. She was a survivor, and survivors were adaptable. Okay, he said suddenly, surprising himself. Let's do it. Luna's eyes widened. Really? Really? Right. But we do this right. Legal contracts, clear terms, mutual protection. I'll have my lawyer draw up the paperwork tomorrow. Luna extended her hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Damian shook it. Her skin was soft, but her grip was firm, and something passed between them in that moment, a recognition of shared desperation and mutual respect. Partners? Luna asked. Partners, Damian confirmed. They shook hands, sealing their unlikely agreement. Neither of them realized how much this moment would change both of their lives. What had started as a desperate solution to seemingly impossible problems would become something neither of them expected, the beginning of something real, something worth fighting for. But that was still to come. For now, they were just two strangers taking the biggest risk of their lives, trusting each other with futures that hung in the balance. The city continued to hum around them, indifferent to the life-changing decision that had just been made on a blanket in Grant Park. Tomorrow, their real lives would begin. Tonight, they were still just Damian and Luna, two people who had found each other in the darkness and decided to step into the light together. 3 weeks later, Luna Rivera stood in the master bathroom of Damian's penthouse, staring at her reflection in the mirror. The luxury apartment occupied the top 2 floors of a gleaming skyscraper, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered breathtaking views of Lake Michigan and the Chicago skyline. Everything was pristine, modern, and expensive, from the Italian marble countertops to the custom-designed furniture that probably cost more than most people made in a year. Luna still felt like she was living in someone else's dream. The woman looking back at her in the mirror was almost unrecognizable from the street performer who had sat on a blanket in Grant Park just 3 weeks ago. Her dark hair had been professionally styled, her skin glowed from expensive treatments, and she wore a silk blouse that felt like water against her skin. But it was her eyes that showed the real change. They held a mixture of gratitude, determination, and something else she couldn't quite name. "Luna, are you ready?" Damian's voice called from the bedroom. "Almost," she replied, applying the last touches of makeup that his personal stylist had taught her to use. Today was important. Their first major public appearance together at a charity gala would be their debut as a couple to Chicago's social elite. She walked into the bedroom, where Damian was adjusting his bow tie in front of a full-length mirror. He looked devastatingly handsome in his tuxedo, every inch the successful CEO. When he saw her, he stopped mid-adjustment, his eyes widening slightly. "You look, .. he began, then seemed to lose his words. "Acceptable?" Luna asked, smoothing down her emerald green evening gown. "Breathtaking," he said quietly, and for a moment, something flickered in his eyes that made Luna's heart skip a beat. They had maintained their professional boundaries perfectly over the past 3 weeks. Luna had her own bedroom. They shared meals and discussed their schedules like business partners, and Damian had been nothing but respectful and considerate. But there were moments, small, fleeting moments, when Luna caught him looking at her with something more than polite interest, and she felt an answering flutter in her chest. "Thank you," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Your stylist did an amazing job." "It's not the clothes," Damian said, then seemed to catch himself. "I mean, you look great. Are you nervous?" Luna nodded honestly. "It's terrified, actually. What if I say the wrong thing? What if people see right through this charade?" Damian moved closer, his presence somehow both comforting and unsettling. "Just be yourself. The woman I met that night, she was real, authentic. That's all you need to be tonight." "The woman you met that night was desperate and broken," Luna said softly. "The woman I met that night was brave enough to take a chance." "On a stranger," Damian corrected. "She was strong enough to survive whatever brought her to those streets, smart enough to see a solution when everyone else saw only problems. That woman is extraordinary." Luna felt tears prick her eyes at his words. In the 3 weeks since their marriage, a quiet courthouse ceremony with only their lawyer as witness, Damian had shown her nothing but kindness and respect. He had asked no questions about her past, made no demands beyond what their agreement specified, and had gone out of his way to make her comfortable in his world. "Damian," she began, not sure what she wanted to say. "I know," he said quietly. "This is all pretend. I haven't forgotten." But as they stood there, looking at each other in the soft light of the bedroom, Luna wondered if that was entirely true. The line between pretense and reality was becoming increasingly blurred, and she wasn't sure either of them was prepared for what that might mean. "We should go," Damian said finally, breaking the spell. "The car is waiting." Luna nodded, gathering her evening bag and wrap. As they prepared to leave, she caught sight of herself in the mirror one more time. The woman looking back at her was polished, elegant, and perfectly suited to be on the arm of a man like Damian Cross. But underneath the surface, she was still Luna Rivera, carrying secrets that could destroy everything they had built together. And as they headed out into the glittering world of Chicago high society, she couldn't help but wonder how long she could maintain the illusion before her past caught up with her. The truth revealed: the charity gala was everything Luna had expected and more. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and was filled with Chicago's most powerful and influential people. Women in designer gowns mingled with men in perfectly tailored tuxedos. Their conversations a mixture of business deals and social gossip. Luna had made it through the first hour without any major missteps, staying close to Damian's side and following his lead in conversations. She had smiled at the right moments, laughed politely at unfunny jokes, and fielded questions about their whirlwind romance with carefully rehearsed answers. But as the evening progressed, Luna noticed the stares. Some were curious, others calculating, and a few were openly hostile. She was the mysterious woman who had captured Damian Cross's heart, and Chicago society was clearly divided on whether she belonged in their world. "You're doing great," Damian murmured in her ear as they moved through the crowd. "I'm proud of you." Luna felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. She was about to respond when she saw a familiar face. Across the room, a face that made her blood run cold. Marcus Delacroix stood near the bar, his predatory smile fixed on her as he raised his champagne glass in a mock toast. Luna's hand instinctively tightened on Damian's arm, and she felt the blood drain from her face. "Luna, what's wrong?" Damian asked, following her gaze. "I need to get some air," she said quickly, her voice tight with panic. "Of course. Let me know," Luna said sharply, then caught herself. I just need a moment alone, please." Without waiting for his response, she hurried toward the terrace doors, her heart pounding in her chest. Almost made it. Outside, when a hand grabbed her arm. Well, if it isn't Luna Rivera," Marcus said, his voice smooth as silk but carrying an unmistakable threat. "Or should I say Luna Cross now?" Luna jerked her arm free, her eyes blazing. "Let go of me, Marcus. Now is that any way to greet an old friend?" Marcus's smile was cruel, especially when that friend could destroy your little fairy tale. "With a single phone call? What do you want?" Luna asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "The same thing I've always wanted," Marcus replied. "What you stole from me. What you think you can hide from by playing dress-up with your rich husband." Luna's mind raced. She had hoped that her marriage to Damian would provide enough protection, enough distance from her past. But Marcus had found her anyway, and now he was here to collect. "I don't have it," she said desperately. "I told you, I don't know where it is." "Your father was very creative in his hiding places," Marcus said conversationally. "But I'm a patient man, and now that I know where you are, I can be very persuasive." "Luna?" Damian's voice cut through their conversation like a blade. He stood in the doorway, his eyes taking in the scene with sharp intelligence. "Is everything all right?" Marcus's smile widened. "Ah, the husband. Marcus Delacroix," he said, extending his hand. "I was just catching up with Luna here. We have quite a history together." Damian didn't take the offered hand. Instead, he moved to Luna's side, his presence protective and reassuring. "I'm sure you do. But I think Luna was looking for some air, not conversation." "Of course," Marcus said smoothly. "Luna, we'll continue our chat another time. Soon." He turned to Damian. "You have a lovely wife, Cross. I hope you know how lucky you are." With that, he disappeared back into the ballroom, leaving Luna trembling. "In his wake, Luna, what was that about?" Damian asked gently. "Who was that man?" Luna closed her eyes, knowing that the moment she had been dreading had finally arrived. "We need to go home," she said quietly. "There's something I need to tell." "You?" The ride back to the penthouse was silent, the tension between them palpable. Once they were inside, Luna went straight to the living room and poured herself a glass of wine with shaking hands. "Luna," Damian said, settling beside her on the couch, "talk to me." She took a long sip of wine, gathering her courage. "My father wasn't just a musician," she began. "He was also a forensic accountant. He worked for the FBI, investigating financial crimes." Damian listened without interruption as Luna's story unfolded. Her father, David Rivera, had been working on a case involving money laundering and organized crime. He had discovered evidence of a massive corruption scheme that reached into the highest levels of Chicago's business and political elite. He was supposed to testify, Luna continued, her voice growing stronger. But 3 days before the trial, there was a car accident. The police said it was mechanical failure, but my father had been receiving threats for weeks. "And you think it wasn't an accident?" Damian said quietly. Luna nodded. "I know it wasn't. and I know because of what happened afterward. She told him about the break-ins, the threatening phone calls, the men who had followed her. Marcus Delacroix, she explained, worked for the very people her father had been investigating. He was convinced that David Rivera had hidden evidence somewhere, and he believed Luna knew where it was. So you ran, Damian said. I had to. I liquidated everything I could, but it wasn't enough. Couldn't afford to keep running forever. And I couldn't go to the police, because I didn't know who to trust. She looked at him with tear-filled eyes. When I met you that night, I was at the end of my rope. I had nowhere else to go. Damian was quiet for a long moment, processing everything she had told him. Why didn't you tell me this before? He asked finally. Because I was afraid, Luna admitted. Afraid you'd back out of our agreement. Afraid you'd realize what kind of danger I was bringing into your life. And now Marcus has found you? Yes. And he's not going to stop. He thinks marrying you will somehow make me more vulnerable, not less? Damian stood and began pacing, his mind working through the implications. Oh. Do you know where this evidence is? He asked. Luna shook her head. My father never told me. I've been through everything he left behind, and I can't find anything. Maybe you haven't been looking in the right places, Damian said thoughtfully. What about your guitar? You said it belonged to your father. Luna's eyes widened. You think he hid something in my guitar? It's possible. Something personal. Something he knew you'd never part with. Luna rushed to her room and returned. With her father's acoustic guitar, with trembling hands, she began examining it carefully. After several minutes of searching, she felt something unusual near the sound hole. There's something here, she said, her voice filled with excitement and fear. Together they carefully extracted a small USB drive that had been hidden inside the guitar's body. Luna stared at it, her heart pounding. This is what Marcus has been looking for, she whispered. What got my father killed? Damian took the drive from her hands, his expression grim. Then we need to make sure he doesn't. Get it? And we need to make sure you're safe. Damian, I'm so sorry, Luna said, tears streaming down her face. I never meant for you to get involved in this. Should have told you the truth from the beginning. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. Hey, we're partners, remember? We're in this together. As Luna cried against his shoulder, Damian realized that somewhere along the way, their fake marriage had become something real. He cared about this woman more than he had ever cared about anyone. And he was going to do everything in his power to protect her, no matter what it cost him. But as he held her, he couldn't shake the feeling that their troubles were just beginning. Marcus Delacroix was not the type of man to give up easily, and now that he knew where Luna was, he would stop at nothing to get what he wanted. The game had changed, and the stakes had never been higher. The resolution the next morning, Damian sat across from FBI agent Sarah Chen in a downtown coffee shop, the USB drive hidden in his jacket pocket. Luna had insisted on coming with him, despite his concerns for her safety. You understand the magnitude of what you're bringing me, Agent Chen said quietly after Damian had explained the situation. This evidence could bring down some very powerful people. That's exactly why we need your help, Damian replied. Luna's life is in danger, and now that Marcus knows where she is, it's only going to get worse. Agent Chen studied Luna carefully. Your father was a good man, Miss Rivera. He was my partner on this case. I've been looking for this evidence for 2 years. You knew my father? Luna asked, her voice filled with emotion. David was one of the best forensic accountants the Bureau ever had. He was also my friend. Agent Chen's expression softened. He talked about you all the time. You would be so proud of the woman you've become. Luna wiped away tears as Agent Chen continued. With this evidence, we can finally move forward with the prosecutions. But I need you to understand this is going to be a long process. Marcus and his associates won't go down without a fight. What about Luna's safety? Damian asked, his hand finding hers under the table. We can offer her protection, but the safest thing would be for her to disappear. Again, new identity, new location, start over somewhere else. No, Luna said firmly. I've been running for 2 years. I'm tired of running. I want to see this through. Agent Chen nodded approvingly. I hoped you'd say that. We'll need your testimony to authenticate the evidence and provide context for how your father obtained it. Over the following weeks, Luna worked closely with the FBI, providing crucial testimony that helped piece together the massive corruption scheme her father had uncovered. The evidence on the USB drive was even more damning than they had hoped. Containing financial records, recorded conversations, and documentation of illegal activities spanning multiple industries. Meanwhile, their marriage might have started as a business arrangement. But watching Luna's courage and determination as she faced her past had shown him what real strength looked like. She was no longer the broken woman he had met on the street. She was a survivor who had found her voice, who was using it to seek justice for her father. The arrests began on a rainy Tuesday morning. Marcus Delacroix was taken into custody at his downtown office, along with 3 city councilmen, 2 judges, and the CEO of a major construction company. The media called it the biggest corruption scandal in Chicago's history. Luna stood at the window of the penthouse, watching the news coverage with a mixture of relief and sadness. It was over, finally over. But the victory felt hollow without her father there to see it. "Are you okay?" Damian asked, joining her at the window. "I keep thinking about what he would say," Luna replied. "If he could see all this, he'd be proud." Damian said simply, "Not just of what you've done, but of who you've become." Luna turned to face him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "I love you," she said quietly. "I know that wasn't part of our agreement, and I know this whole thing started as a fake marriage. But somewhere along the way, it became real for me." "You became real for me." Damian's heart soared at her words. "Luna, I know you probably don't feel the same way," she continued quickly, "and that's okay. Our contract is almost up anyway, and now that this is all over, I can finally start fresh. I just wanted you to know that these past few months have been the happiest of my life." "Luna, stop," Damian said gently, taking her hands in his. "Do you really think I could have gone through all this with you and not fallen in love?" Her eyes widened. "What?" "I love you," he said, his voice strong and sure. "I love your strength, your courage, your beautiful voice. I love the way you made me realize that there's more to life than business deals and family expectations. I love that you helped me find the man I was meant to be." Luna threw her arms around him, and he spun her around the living room, both of them laughing with joy and relief. "So what happens now?" Luna asked when he set her down. "Now we start over," Damian said, cupping her face in his hands. "No more contracts, no more fake marriages. Just us. For real this time." "Your parents are going to hate this," Luna said with a smile. "My parents are going to have to accept that their son is happy," Damian replied. "And if they can't, then that's their loss." 6 months later, Luna stood in the small club where she had been performing for the past few weeks. After the trial ended and Marcus was sentenced to 20 years in prison, she had decided to return to music. Not as a street performer, but as a professional singer with her own band. The club was packed tonight. It's filled with friends, supporters, and music lovers who had heard about the woman who had helped bring down one of Chicago's biggest corruption rings. But Luna only had eyes for one person, Damian, who sat at a front table with a proud smile on his face as she took the stage. Luna felt a familiar flutter of nerves, but this time it was different. This time, she wasn't performing out of desperation or necessity. She was performing because she loved it, because music was her passion, because she finally had the freedom to pursue her dreams. "Good evening, everyone," she said into the microphone, her voice clear and strong. 2 years ago, I was performing on the streets, running from my past and afraid of my future. Tonight, I'm standing here because someone believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself." She looked directly at Damian, who was watching her with love and admiration in his eyes. "This song is for everyone who has ever felt lost, who has ever had to start over, and who has ever discovered that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places." As Luna began to sing, her voice filled the room with a warmth and authenticity that captivated everyone present. The song was one she had written herself, about finding love in the darkness and learning to trust again. It was her story there. Story, and she poured her heart into every note. When the song ended, the club erupted in applause. Luna saw tears in Damian's eyes as he stood and applauded with the rest of the crowd. She had found her voice again, not just as a singer, but as a woman who had faced her fears and emerged stronger after the show. Damian made his way backstage, pulling Luna into his arms and spinning her around. "You were incredible," he said, pressing a kiss to her lips. "Absolutely incredible." "I had good inspiration," Luna replied, her arms around his neck. "I have something for you," Damian said, reaching into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a small velvet box, and Luna's breath caught in her throat. "Damian, what are you doing?" "Something I should have done months ago," he said, dropping to one knee. "Luna Rivera Cross, I know we're already married, but I want to do this right. Will you marry me? For real this time? With all our friends and family watching? With vows that we write ourselves? With the promise of a future built on love instead of contracts?" Luna's eyes filled with tears as she looked down at the man who had changed her life in every possible way. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, of course, yes." The small crowd that had gathered backstage burst into cheers as Damian slipped the ring onto her finger. It was a simple solitaire, elegant and beautiful, just like their love had become. 3 months later, they had their real wedding in a small ceremony in Grant Park, not far from where they had first met. Luna wore a simple white dress and carried a bouquet of wildflowers. Damian looked handsome in a navy suit, his eyes never leaving his bride's face. Victoria and Sebastian Cross were in attendance, having finally accepted that their son had found genuine happiness. They had been skeptical at first, but watching Damian and Luna together, seeing the way they looked at each other and supported each other through the trial and its aftermath, had convinced them that this was the real thing. Agent Chen was there too, along with several of Luna's new friends from the music scene. It was a small gathering, but it was perfect, filled with people who truly cared about them and wanted to celebrate their love as they exchanged vows they had written themselves. Luna thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. She had started as a woman running from her past, afraid and alone. Damian had been a man trapped by his family's expectations, facing a future he didn't want. Together, they had found the courage to face their fears, to fight for justice, and to build a life based on love and mutual respect. They had discovered that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places, and that true love is worth any risk. "I promise to love you not just in the good times, but in the difficult ones," Luna said, her voice strong and clear as she looked into Damian's eyes. "I promise to support your dreams while pursuing my own, to be your partner in every sense of the word, and to never stop believing in the magic of what we've built together. I promise to protect you, to cherish you, and to never take for granted the gift of your love," Damian replied, his voice thick with emotion. "I promise to encourage your music, to support your dreams, and to remind you every day that you are the strongest, most beautiful woman I've ever known." As they kissed to seal their vows, Luna felt a sense of completeness she had never experienced before. She had found her home, not in a place, but in a person. She had found her voice, not just as a singer, but as a woman who had learned to stand up for herself and fight for what she believed in. The sun was setting over Chicago as they walked hand in hand through the park where their story had begun. The city lights were beginning to twinkle in the distance, and the future stretched out before them, full of possibility and promise. "No regrets?" Damian asked, squeezing her hand. "Only one," Luna replied with a smile. "I wish I had met you sooner." "I don't," Damian said, pulling her closer. "I think we met exactly when we were supposed to, when we were both ready to take the biggest risk of our lives." As they walked into their new life together, Luna realized that sometimes the most beautiful love stories begin with two broken people finding each other in the darkness and deciding to step into the light together. Their story had started with a desperate proposal between strangers, but it had become something neither of them had expected, a love that would last a lifetime. The end.